Hello, everyone, and welcome to this masterclass in association with global compliance provider TMF Group and co-produced by FDI Intelligence and the Banker. Today, I'm here in our studio London with Mark Weil, the CEO of TMF. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Welcome.
Mark, in the first chapters of this masterclass, we will discuss the complexities of doing business across border in the current volatile global economy. Let me start from the Ukraine war. Russia's invasion of Ukraine on February 24th has triggered a wave of sanctions from the US, the United Kingdom, the EU on Russia and its leadership, effectively making it basically impossible to run cross-border trade operations between Russia and these regions, except for maybe oil and gas. TMF takes pride in helping its clients navigate complex business environments. How do you help your clients navigate these exceptional complexities?
Well, I'll talk about Ukraine itself specifically, and then there's a wider point about what it says about the way the world's going and broader sort of geopolitics. So on the Ukraine situation, as you say, conflict taking place as we speak with great tragic consequences for all those involved. For those doing business there are obviously sanctions. There are also sanctioned parties, and we monitor that on behalf of our clients. There are about 1,500 sanctioned parties if you look at US, UK, EU, other jurisdictions, and their lists of targeted individuals and companies. And all firms, ourselves included, then need to make sure those parties are appropriately dealt with, which generally means freezing any activity on their behalf and any payments, etc. And those come with significant consequences, so really need to be managed well. You've then got the unraveling from what I think is the world's 12th biggest economy across all sectors going on, which is a very big shock to the world economy and has all sorts of knock-on consequences. We're seeing it in energy prices, food prices, and different companies managing that. So the repercussions go well beyond the immediate geography of Ukraine and Russia. And in general, what we see is a change in mindset, to misquote Fukuyama's end of history. It's like the beginning of history. It's like suddenly the general trend towards globalization feels quite shocked by this. And there's a sense of at least a risk of some economic balkanization. It's not just about Russia and those countries more sympathetic to or aligned with Russia. You obviously have tensions between the West, US particularly, and China going on. And so there's a general sense of maybe the world's going to be more complex to navigate, more nationalism, more complex rules, and at least some question marks over whether and how to invest in places on the assumption that the rules for doing business there may be more onerous.
Totally, and you were right on the money when you mentioned, for example, China. We saw the repercussions of these geopolitical tensions into trade wars, tariffs, way before the Ukraine war. To what extent the understanding of these new rules, these new regulations, and compliance can still unlock investment into these jurisdictions, except for Russia, and to what extent they will deter investment into these jurisdictions?
Yeah. Well, in general, complexity is bad for investment, and but it's not just foreign direct investment, it's bad for wealth creation, capital formation locally, because entrepreneurs and others struggle as well, businesses struggle with complex rules. What I will say is generally, sanctions are different, but economic nationalism generally just means you have to approach the problem differently. You want to invest in China for all sorts of reasons, a huge consumer base, market, natural resources or otherwise. And so if the rules there require high levels of local adaptation, substance on the ground, then that's just the way you have to invest. It probably won't change your decision to invest, but it might add to the cost of doing it and certainly the complexity of doing it. So when you look at our rankings for global complexity, we're just producing our index for this year, some of the most complex countries are also some of the biggest recipients of foreign direct investment. So generally complexity doesn't stop investment, doesn't help it, but it does mean you need to go in with your eyes open and figure out how to cope with often very complex, multi-tiered sets of rules from local to state to national in those places.
Thank you, Mark. And we will discuss into more detail the findings of the Global Business Complexity Index report in the next chapters of this masterclass series. The report has now come to its ninth edition and takes into account almost 300 criteria. So it's a pretty extensive picture of the complexity of doing business really across all the jurisdictions you work in. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and I'll see you next time with chapter 2, where we'll discuss with Mark ESG and what it means from a regulatory standpoint.